To understand stress and accent marks in Spanish, you have to understand how to divide words into syllables, so hopefully you've mastered that before you're moving on to this. There are 3 rules in Spanish for determining which syllable of a word gets the stress or the emphasis. The first rule is that if a word ends with a vowel, an N, or an S, the next to last syllable is stressed. The next rule is that if a word ends with any other letter, the last syllable is stressed. And the last rule is that if either of these 2 rules needs to be broken for any reason, there must be a written accent mark. Or another way to state that rule would be that if you see a written accent mark, it doesn't matter what the word ends with, the stress is going to be where the accent mark is. That's what the accent mark is for. Let's look at these rules one at a time, starting with the first one. Here we have a word, and if we know how to divide this word into syllables, we know that these are the syllables we end up with. We may not know, however, exactly how to pronounce this word because we may not be sure which syllable gets the stress. We look at it, we see that it ends with S, and if we know that our rule says words that end with S have the next to last syllable stressed, then we know that the stress is going to be on the A. Therefore, our word is trabajamos, with the ja syllable getting the emphasis. It's not trabajamos, it's not trabajamos, it's not trabajamos, it's trabajamos. Rule number 2 says if a word ends with any other letter, the last syllable is stressed. Here we have the word nacionalidad. If we know our rules for dividing into syllables, we know that we have nacionalidad. We see that we end with a D, which is not included in rule number 1, so therefore our last syllable gets the stress. Nacionalidad. That's where the emphasis is, on the dad. And our last rule is really the easiest. We look at a word like máquina, we see the accent mark, and that's a definite sign to us that that's where the stress is. Why it was decided that the word would be pronounced máquina with the emphasis on the first A, I couldn't tell you, but that's the way the word is pronounced, and therefore to indicate that the emphasis is there on that A, we do have to have a written accent mark on it. Otherwise, the stress would be here on the I, but that's not the way it is because of the written accent mark. Let's try out a mixture of rules here. Our first word is celular. That ends with R. R was not included in rule number 1. That means that our stress is going to be on the last syllable. So the word is celular. The next one's very easy because it has a written accent mark. Therefore, the stress must be on that syllable. Teléfono. The third word, llamada, ends with a vowel. We know that if a word ends with a vowel, the next to last syllable is stressed. So we have llamada. For our next word, we see an N. Remember that rule number 1 says if a word ends with a vowel, an N, or an S, then the next to last syllable is stressed. Therefore, instead of hablan, it's hablan with the stress on the first syllable. And the last word also refers back to rule number 1 because we end with an S. Therefore, our stress is on the next to last syllable, giving us comunicas. Once you're fairly good at dividing words into syllables, knowing which syllable to stress is really a piece of cake. You just have to memorize these 3 simple rules.